Hello and welcome to the Athletic NBA Show. It's Wednesday. I'm Dave DeFore here with Mo DeKill and Seth Partnow. So that means we've got a little bit of nerder, she wrote. Guys, I'm on the East Coast still, and I forgot what it was like to watch sports on the East Coast. 1 a.m. last night. My eyes are killing me right now. Staying up late to watch the end of that crazy Warriors-Kings game. The in-season tournament had me just on the edge of my seat. Just the point differentials. There's so much stuff to pay attention to. We've got like real competitive basketball, guys, and it's the last week in November. This is actually pretty fun.
It's been great. It's been great. I think the court aside, I think, the NBA did a great job setting up the in-season tournament. Like, this has been an excellent launch for the tournament. I think this is something we've seen, the numbers have bore it out in terms of the ratings, because everybody, ratings, and whatnot. The courts need work. We need to adjust.
That's
the
a failure.
Not
failure of execution, not of concept.
Not of concept.
But also, I'll even just say this. We talk about the courts so damn much. Is it really a failure? Like, we're still focused on it 4 weeks afterwards. Some of the courts are ugly as hell. Although I like the Sacramento one. Watching it last night, I was like, okay, I can work with that.
Yeah. It's an easy fix. Take out the middle colored strip. Only have the paint inside the paint, and it's at least better.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was fun though. I think we all can just start out and saying, like, that was awesome. The games last night were awesome. Just across the board with the intensity of it. And what we've said from the beginning was, if the players care, it'll be good. And the players have cared in year one.
And even without fully understanding what the group play and the tournament actually means for them, it's a free trip to Vegas. They get a little bit of money. I don't know if you guys caught the show yesterday. Orlando Magic head coach Jamal Mosley was on with David Aldridge and Marcus Thompson on the Hoops Adjacent. And he talked about it. He was like, we're invested in this. It is fun to be competing for something. And like the regular season, and this is part of why they had to do this. The regular season's 82 games. It drags on. It's just another game. One of 82 is a term that people use all the time. It drives me crazy. And they found a way to add some weight to these early season games. I think this has been fantastic. And the teams are all playing like they're bought in, Seth. Like, that's actually the hook, is, do the players care? And I think undeniably, when you look at these guys and how hard they're going, not to say you don't get some tightly contested regular season games under normal circumstances, but this was something else. I mean, down to the buzzer in a blowout game, you had guys still going hard. We got Hacka Drummond. I mean, and like the Boston Celtics were hacking Drummond to send him to the free throw line so they could increase their point differential just a couple of days after Jason Tatum was complaining about, Orlando running up the score against Boston and how the unwritten rules and all this stuff. I mean, this is good for the sport.
That almost felt like a pre-pology now.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, it's the Bulls. We know we're going to whomp them, and we're going to whomp them by a lot. So I'm preemptively saying, I don't want to do this, but I have to.
Yeah.
This is going to hurt me as much as it hurts you.
But yeah, I mean, I thought last night had a little bit of like a playoff feel to it. Every game was pretty competitive, like down to the wire. Teams playing hard, and I don't mean competitive in score even, but there was competition on the court for 48 minutes. Mo, we talked a little bit. The strategies in these games are completely different, and to a certain degree, some teams maybe have shot themselves in the foot a little bit because they're playing the game for the in-season tournament.
Well, I mean, I just think I think the first two games of the in-season tournament, I don't think teams really thought about the point differential mattering.
Agreed.
And I think that's something that like caught on later, where they're like, oh, we need to win some of these games with style points. I got a lot to say, Dave. First off, everybody crying about the unwritten rules. Unwritten rules suck.
Well, they're unwritten for a reason, because the people who invented them are too embarrassed to write them down.
and this goes to even before the in-season tournament, but when everybody would get mad that somebody would take a shot at the end of the buzzer or whatever and things like that, just play defense, man. It's a 48-minute game. Just because you want to lay down your swords, it's not their fault. Like that's on you. Don't get your ass kicked, all of that stuff. Everybody that was upset about the Drummond situation or whatever, hey, Drummond, make some free throws. That's the point. It's not, that's the deal. We want to talk about
completely different, because there's actually like I can almost see like, okay, well, you don't gotta, like, there's 10 seconds left in the game. You don't got to throw down a windmill on us. Come on, now you're just embarrassing us.
Sure.
No, this has a defined competitive benefit for us to do this. We're not doing this to embarrass you, Andre Drummond. Although, as you say, make a free throw, but we're doing this because we need to do this to reach our goal as a team. And I also,
the Drummond thing is, listen, man, I think we're getting a little soft. No one ever went and apologized to Shaquille O'Neal after a game for putting him on the free throw line. I mean, this is just like, I don't need the head coach apologizing to an opposing team's player for strategizing against the team. Like, we're going a little bit too far here with the feelings in sports, I think. I don't want to sidetrack us too far. But I do want to, there are a couple of things here that I think that we could kind of hit on, but I want to talk Warriors Kings a little bit, because Mo, you mentioned something in our pre-show. We were talking about how the Warriors, they had the game wrapped up. They should have won this game very easily, but things got a little tricky because of their strategy for the in-season tournament.
I'm going to just push a little bit. They had it wrapped up, but they had a lead, and that they were trying, that they would have played differently if it wasn't the in-season tournament, right? They would have played it, I think, differently, in the sense of, look, we knew at that point they had to win by 12 points or more to move on to the in-season tournament. And they were going for it. And that, again, that goes to what we're talking about. The players were into it. The coaching staff was into it. They had wrinkles where, Chris Paul leaves the game early. Gary Payton II leaves the game in the second half. Like, now it's how much do you push on Steph and try to get that stuff. Like, they had actual playoff decisions that had to be made in November. Like, this had a feel. The crowd was totally into it. It was like, I'm pretty sure at that point the crowd knew they had to win. They had to make sure they didn't lose by 12. And I think there was a lot of stuff in that instance where this plays out, if it's a regular season game, differently than it did the in-season tournament. But that's also the point. All right, this game means a little bit more than a regular season game. And I think that was part of the fun. I was ecstatic. I said, man, the Warriors were up 8 at one point, and I said, it feels like they're losing this game. That was the fun part.
Yeah, they were playing desperate.
So there's just a natural analogy to this, to something we're a lot more like group play. I think we're probably just more familiar with from tournament soccer. There's some things here. One, that sort of we're up, but we're actually down. That's a neat sort of, like a lot of soccer games, it's a two-legged aggregate score. And so that, like, we're ahead, but we got to win by 2, or we got to win by 2 goals or something like that. So that's an interesting wrinkle. The other part is something that they've figured out, is that the last group games have to be played at the same time. And I don't like, on one hand, like what you're talking about with like them knowing like the target score, that did add something to it. But on the other hand, is that almost a competitive advantage for the teams that play last? And so if we're talking about tweaks, that's one that I'd like to see them consider, is make sure, especially since they're doing the groups in conference, that you make those last group games like at least tip off simultaneously, so we don't get those weird situations where it's like, hey, I think it's not too hard to imagine a situation saying, hey, if you guys win by exactly 5 points, we both advance.
Right. I wonder if they could when they do this next year. I mean, this is actually why it's exciting, because it is working, but there's a lot of room for improvement. And if they're going to do a thing where they have everyone playing at the same time, make it feel, like an event. Do it all day. Start the games early and just take over an entire day. The beauty of the play-in is that you get those single elimination, but the thing we love about March Madness is that, you know, on a Thursday, I'm watching basketball at noon. You know, give me one day of that from the NBA and I'd be pretty happy. I mean, you know, we get it on occasional holidays, but do it for the tournament. Just like start those games
tough.
at noon. Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun for us.
That's tough because now you're not getting anybody in the seats. Now you're not getting anybody.
Do it on Black Friday.
Right. Well, okay. Well, the NFL has that now.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. You know, I just think now we're asking for miracles, guys. Like that's a tough one.
I just want to flip back and forth, you know, game to game. You know,
or like have the quad screen. Yeah.
Group A. You know, I want all 4 games from Group A.
So can I bring up a sort of related question, by the way?
Yeah.
You mentioned like the excitement of single elimination. So basically the tournament, how it worked this year is if you went 4-0, obviously you advanced. 3-1 basically gave you a 50-50 chance. So I'm wondering if that's okay, or if there's a way to keep teams alive a little longer, just because, you know, there's how many games I'll be looking at this. I'm writing about this tomorrow for The Athletic, is sort of what that, like, how many of the games across like the second half had 0 implications, and is there a way we can tweak it to do that or not, or do we just not worry about it?
Is that just sort of baked into group play? I mean, you know,
yeah, I think
kind of just happens.
We're now like in the desire of making this perfect.
Yeah,
we're gonna kind of, I think, ruin this a little bit. Like,
I'm not suggesting any particular solution. I'm just wondering if there is a way to have more teams alive heading into the last group.
I think it's just product.
And I guess, you know, looking at it, I guess there were only,
I mean,
that's fair.
We had stakes. I mean, just again, Boston not only had to win, they had to win by a lot. Right. Like there was an element of that stuff. You know, the Warriors had to win by 12 to the point that they were all kind of keeping track of it. Even the Kings were aware that, hey, man, we can't lose by 12. Like there was the whole, like well,
Joe Mazzulla talked about this. I mean, the reason they went to the hack of Drummond was because one of his coaches, his job was to say, hey, we need this.
You need to win. No,
he's watching the Brooklyn game.
Yeah. And, you know, again, I know the purity of the game and the disrespect of the game. This isn't disrespect of the game, because if all y'all cared in November a few years ago, we probably wouldn't be worried about it now. So miss me with the purity of the game, because you're all watching now. Like that's the honest thing with this stuff. And if nobody cares about this game more than me in that regard of being respectful, and I think like we just got to chill. I just think the way it is now, the games themselves are kind of perfect. I think. Yeah, I'd love for them to all play the groups to all play at the same time. I just don't think that's really viable, especially when you have 5 teams in a group. Somebody has to sit. So, you know, there has to be a tweak of that. But ultimately, like they kind of nailed it.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the group play, is there anything that you guys like would change about the group play? I mean, the tournament format's pretty, I think, plain and simple. But with group play, is there any tweaks you would make just right off the top of your head?
I gotta say Tuesday and Friday tourney nights, that's certainly been a success. I think that I would none of the tournament games were the back end of a back-to-back. I would try to make sure that none of them were the front end of a back-to-back also, because I think, as we're talking about with this point differential, now you're putting a team that it's on the first half of a back-to-back. You're actually putting them in a advantageous spot, because, hey, we want to not just win this game, but we want to win it by 20. We also got a game tomorrow. So what are we doing rotation wise?
Robbing from Peter to Paul,
I think that's, and the fact that that's unbalanced between teams, I think that that's something that they should, you know, equalize that out a little bit, and really protect these games. If they're going to make this the early season showcase, then, you know, and I know the schedule makers have a hard job, and this is only going to make it harder. But
I honestly, my adjustment set to that is just make Wednesday night also an in-season tournament game, so you can spread it out. Because obviously the concern is, right, like the first in-season tournament day, they want everybody playing, and then you don't have a lot of product for Wednesday. Well, they just split it up,
yeah,
so that you have a Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Friday, maybe the tournament's going to go a little bit quicker or whatnot. Maybe you have to tweak some stuff there, but like, I think that's something that you should probably look at.
I mean,
in
and
trying
then
to
you
make
can
it, but
really
you're
blow
right.
it out too.
you could do Tuesday through
Yeah.
Friday, because if you think about it, you know, these games, it's not like the tournament doesn't last a long time on the calendar. It's not that many weeks. So if you just did Tuesday through Friday, these are our tournament games, and then have a couple of like the big launch on Tuesday. We're gonna have a ton of games, you know, marquee matchups. But then you can, like you said, Mo, you can spread it out just a little bit, and then at the end, try to force everyone to play like Thursday, Friday, maybe.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for sure. But the point Seth made is extremely important, and that this being the front half of a lot of back-to-backs is challenging. And I think that puts a lot of questions on the coaching staff in terms of them trying to figure out what they're supposed to do and how to handle it. And I think it makes it almost not even worth it at that point, like extra challenging in that regard.
Right. And I wonder if point differential being the tiebreaker, maybe point differential being the tiebreaker, while being a good idea in prospect, I think the schedule difficulty might mean that has to get tweaked. Maybe it's like most quarters won or something like that. Like they used to remember in the old CBA, you used to get like 4 points for winning the game and a point for each quarter you won. Maybe doing that. It still has some of the same effects, but I don't think it has quite the same. All right, we're winning this game by a billion. Do we have to try to win the fourth quarter? Or if we're up a bunch in the fourth quarter, we can still sit our guys. Maybe that's a possible tweak.
I don't hate that. That's to me, look, that's at least there's still a competitive element to the game, right? Like the point differential, getting these guys to run through the tape, to play through the finish, is such a huge difference in watchability. You know, I mean, think about the people. I mean, you know, I know it's hard for us to do this, but think about the people that pay their money to go see a blowout. I mean, we sit at home, we watch a blowout. It comes on. I just flip over. I'm
every Monday night on the Nerder stream. Mo and I watch a blowout.
We know how to pick them every time. Yeah. Every time we know how to pick them. Oh God!
There's a difference between a blowout and a blowout where guys are still playing hard, even if it's not the stars. Like, I mean, you know, the guys off the bench, like still gunning, going, running stuff. I just think that's better, you know, overall. So now we head into the tournament play. The quarterfinals are played there. You know, I think the Bucks have a home game. I mean, the better teams are gonna have teams. They're gonna be hosting tournament games at home, and then they head to Vegas for the semis and the finals. Look, having a tournament game in front of your home crowd, I bet we're gonna see some really hot crowds.
Well, those games are gonna be
these
lit.
games. Yeah,
they're gonna be fun. I mean, those are great matchups too. Fun games.
And so I want to ask you guys, is it the right move to take the semis and the finals and move them to Vegas? Like, I understand that there's an impetus here, right? Like, number one, the NBA really wants a team in Vegas. I think everybody wants a team in Vegas. It's a good test for the NBA doing well in Vegas outside of Summer League. This is good. Like, you start to build up, you know, your customer base. I get it. You want people to show up to this. You want to make it an event. I totally understand. But does it rob the fans of another opportunity to actually celebrate and go through something with their team, which gets them even more invested? I mean, again, Seth, you just said these games, I mean, the crowds are into them. It is going to be hot for these elimination games. And I wonder if it isn't a mistake to take that away from the fans.
I think that something to look at is all right, we've played the quarters. Now we got the Final Four in Vegas, to separate that out in timing a little bit, so that, okay, like if the Lakers or Clippers or Warriors or Kings or Suns or Utah like make it, like those fans will get to Vegas. Like, that's no problem. I think but if you want the possibility of people from Milwaukee, if they win that game, to head to Vegas, I think having a little bit more of a gap, just allowing people to make those plans. This is something that they do very well in the in-season tournaments in like soccer, for example, is like, all right, you've qualified for the semifinal of the FA Cup, you get to play at Wembley. It's obviously England, smaller country, so it's easier to get places, but it's not, you're not going to, you don't live in Newcastle and shit, I got to get down to London next week. It's like, it's, 6 weeks from now, so I can make those plans and make that happen. And there's a balance between not losing impetus with the tournament and that, but I do think from a standpoint of getting that, like that partisan celebration, which is a big part of like winning things. I think that there is a because we don't have a really the ethic of traveling to watch your team in this country as they do in soccer, in soccer cultures. I think that finding that balance is something to look at.
Our country is huge, to be fair. I mean, it's just hard. Like, Miami to Las Vegas is a heck of a trip.
I'm gonna first off push back on a lot of that. I like all of it. To start with it. One, you're right about the timing though. Short turnaround in terms of figuring out how to get to Vegas if you're not nearby Vegas is challenging, right? Like I've literally dropped everything I needed to do to go to Vegas, that night. So in LA, it's easy. One, we don't have the impetus to travel for NBA games. Okay. Football does it all the time. I've traveled for college football games cross country. I know people come all the way to LA for the Rose Bowl. And I'm going to just be honest with you. If you're in cold ass Milwaukee, yeah, maybe you want to go to Vegas for a few days and enjoy a little bit, not freezing conditions and whatnot and all of those things. Like, I think that stuff kind of matters in that regard. Like, I'm genuinely not worried about it.
I'm wearing 4 layers right now, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point, right? So, if I gave you a ticket to Vegas that's for a few days, you'd hop on, and I think that's kind of the thing there with that. I think the idea of moving it is great because it adds more importance to this. You 4 teams, we're putting you in this tournament, we're moving it, and I don't mind if they move it around. Vegas this year.
They should do it in the bubble. They should recreate the bubble one year.
Let's not rehash old things.
Definitely do it at Disney.
No, but move it around. Vegas this year. Do it in Louisville.
How about Seattle?
Seattle. Move it around in places that don't have
just
NBA.
Poke Seattle some more.
No, but just do it in places where it's like, you know what? The locals can't really go to a lot of those games, and move it around. And then that's also your test case for future expansion, maybe. But move that thing around. I think there's a lot of fun with that in that area. But I have no problem with them moving or moving the semifinals and finals into one place, because that's the tournament feel. That's the NCAA tournament vibe they're trying to go for, right? The Final Four. Everybody we know for the most part is going to be in Vegas, except for us, probably. Like the FOMO I'm going to have that week is going to be pretty impressive. But like, I know a whole bunch of people are going to Vegas for the games. I think there's a lot of stuff you can do with it, and that's the Final Four feel to it, and that's what they were hoping for in the in-season tournament. So I think just saying like, oh, we'll give it to the home teams. Like, I think it's also difficult because those places have to have the arena available. Yep. There's a lot of variables to that stuff. I think it's a little bit less variable-y if you say, hey, this year, Vegas. I just want I would like them to move it around a little bit.
That's a great point, Mo, because I don't know how they did that. Did they team like for that quarterfinal day? Okay. I mean, really, for that little period, everybody's got to hold their arenas because we don't know exactly who's playing where. I think that's a little bit of and the more dates you put that on, that is actually like, that is an imposition. If you're, sorry, these 5 days, you can't book, you can't book Taylor Swift. It's like, well,
no, they're just going to tell you, no, we're booking Taylor Swift.
Exactly.
Y'all are getting the second leg on that.
Yeah. Do you know how much money we make from that show? Like, come on. Like,
that's an
sorry, Adam. We're Taylor's coming to town.
Okay. So final thing on the in-season tournament, just because, the discourse around it. Okay. Is it too difficult? Does it need to be explained a little bit more for sports fans to fully, like NBA fans in particular? This is brand new. Do you guys feel like the NBA is doing a good enough job of fully explaining what it is and what they're trying to do? Or does that not matter? Will fans just figure this out as we go?
I think both. I think the NBA has done a pretty good job with it. Let me be honest with you. I screwed up last night. I thought the Bucks needed to win by point differential, not realizing they just needed to win. Like, it was very simple, and I tweeted it out, and everybody let me know how wrong I was, which is fine because I was wrong. But yeah, it's going to be easy to mess up in that regard and figuring those things out. But I think the NBA's done a good job. I think the broadcast did a good job. Like, they went into that Warriors Kings game and kind of laid it out. The scenarios. They even had a graphic in the top right corner towards the end of the game saying how much they needed to win by. They had the Chiron scores for the other games for everybody to understand, like, this matters, in that regard. I think it's over time, people will adjust and learn. This is year one. This is one of those things that we're learning it on the fly. Let's be honest. The NBA's learning this on the fly. There's a whole lot of adjustments, in terms of how to sell this and pitch this and whatnot to keep going. And I think it's really kind of important to see it through. But I think they've done a pretty good job for the most part.
I've got one more sort of question on this, and I know we want to finish off on another topic. Is we kind of it's the remaining teams aside from, I think, Indiana, are pretty chalky. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the excitement of the tournament?
That's it's interesting. I don't know. Does it matter? I mean, I know we all want, we want a Cinderella, right? This is the thing. Like, think about March Madness. If you don't follow a college team, and even if you do, when it gets to tournament time, you probably have a couple of 15 seeds or 14 seeds that you're like, all right, I'm pulling for these guys. I don't know if the NBA operates that way. Like, if for instance, I don't know who's an awful team. If the Charlotte Hornets were in the mix here, in the tournament, do you guys feel like fans would be rooting for them to upset and potentially win the tournament? I don't know if the NBA works that way. I think the fan bases are pretty locked in. So, is it a bad thing that the good teams have been winning? I'm not sure. Mo, having stars in these marquee tournament games, I think, is going to matter as far as people watching. I don't know if it matters as much for fans.
No, I think it's good having the stars in it for the most part. I think it's fun having a Cinderella in there.
Sure.
Right? Like, that's fun. Like, watching the plucky Indiana Pacers with their high octane offense and absolutely zero defense. Trying to go and win the in-season tournament's kind of a fun little deal, and then going up against the big boys. But I also think it's kind of fun looking at this in some sort of way of like, hey, kind of a playoff preview.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fun sort of view of these things. I think, it's Suns Kings, right? In the first game. Like, that's a potential first round matchup that we could see. That would be a lot of fun. And then if that were to match up, I'd probably go back and look at that. And you have, how
Bucks,
are the
Knicks.
coaches, Bucks, Knicks, that's there's fun stuff with that, and it being the big boys in these things. And I think especially good in the first year that you have the big guns kind of in it, big names in it, exciting players in it. I think this is a good chance for the Kings to kind of continue to introduce themselves to the national market. Same for the Pacers. I think there's some positive stuff there. But if it's all Cinderellas or majority Cinderellas, I think you'll lose a lot of interest. Do you know how annoyed I'd be if Washington made it?
Oh, God.
Do you understand? It's and the ratings. I don't
Wizards Pistons in the in-season tournament.
I don't
final.
know how excited people would be to watch that game. And I think that's kind of the important thing here is this is going to have a relevance, and at the same time provide an excitement because these are going to be fun matchups. And I think there's an important aspect of it, and if certain teams made it, there are teams that, let's just be honest, people don't want to watch. because they're
That's
not
true.
good. They're bad, whatever. It's I only catch the highlights of the Wizards just to see what dumb shit Jordan Poole did today. And it's kind of the situation you're sort of looking at. I think that's
Well,
the deal.
they
I
went
went
oh-
on way too long.
no, but they
going-
went 0-4 with the negative 38-point differential. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that.
yeah,
No risk of
Yeah.
the Wizards spoiling our in-season tournament. Speaking of playoff matchups, did you guys catch OKC and Minnesota last night? Chet versus Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert was dominant. And it got me thinking, now that the Wolves are the 1 seed in the West, and I know it's early, but we're almost 20 games into the season now. It's almost 25% of the season. And they're the 1 seed. Guys, my question for you this week, as we move away from the in-season tournament and start thinking about the playoffs, are the Wolves genuine championship contenders? I mean, we had high expectations for them last year after the Rudy Gobert trade. We thought this would be a team that would be able to manufacture regular season wins and would run into problems in the playoffs. It didn't work out that way. They had some clunky stuff. They had a lot of things that were out of their control even last season that caused them to struggle.
I mean, they didn't get a training camp with. I mean, the Cat Gobert pairing is weird, and they did not get a training camp.
They
with
didn't
the
get a
Cat
chance to
Gobert.
do anything. Yeah,
and it's been much
Cat was
better
hurt.
this year. Yeah,
Cat was hurt. But are the Wolves genuine championship contenders? Like, can we start patting them on the head like the Denver Nuggets of yore and saying, okay, I think you're pretty good. Now you get, should we be having some expectations of them?
Yeah.
They're good.
They're good. It's that simple. It's funny. I got a text from a friend of mine this morning going, Wolves kind of pesky. I'm like, no, not pesky. Good. They're good. Like, they're a good basketball team. Like, this is the deal there. It'll be interesting to see how they handle the Jaden McDaniels injury for a little bit. He's going to miss some time with a sprained ankle, but defensively, I mean, besides Rudy Gobert, who was absolutely, you're right, Dave, was dominant in that game last night with OKC. But Anthony Edwards is doing a great job on the perimeter. McDaniels, when he's healthy, they got a great game last night from Troy Brown Jr. Like, shocked me, but like they got an impressive night from him. Connolly's a strong, solid point guard. Cat's gonna knock down shots. Defense could be better, but like they got a lot. They got a lot of stuff to work with there. And at the end of the day, they have a go-to guy in Anthony Edwards. They got the star that you're kind of looking at. Like, they're good, man. Like, there's no reason to think some things have to break right. I wouldn't pick them to make it to the finals, but I don't think it wouldn't shock me at all if they make it to the conference finals. They got a lot of size, a lot of length. They got defense. They can score. Like, it wouldn't shock me.
the two things that worry me is they have to play two bigs. Just
Right.
because of where, I mean, all their all the money, the talent and money they have locked up in Gobert and Towns and Reed means that they sort of, and one thing we've seen is having flexibility to try different things in the playoffs, and you wonder about that. And also, like, they're among their guys who you'd probably say are playoff playable. There's a lot of questionable shooting there. Between Kyle Anderson and McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, if he's sort of the back end of the rotation, and obviously Gobert. So you do wonder if in a playoff environment, how big those challenges become. But they also, I mean, if they do have better defense, especially at the point of attack in front of Rudy, than he ever had in Utah, I think.
Right.
That was going to be my next question. Like, does this version of the Minnesota Timberwolves, when you compare it to those Utah teams that Rudy took to the playoffs, we know the problems with those teams were point of attack defense. It forced Rudy off the court because they just needed to keep up on the offensive end because they couldn't defend. Will they be able to cover up enough for the deficiencies in Rudy's game that will absolutely be highlighted in the playoffs because teams they're going to target him. They're going to try to get him off the floor. Do they have the perimeter defense, Mo, to be able to cover up for that so that Rudy can stay on the floor? Because that's their best chance at winning, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do. I think that's the big difference with this team with Rudy than he had with the Utah teams. It's like, look, the Utah teams At a certain point, they just stopped defending on the perimeter and depended on Rudy to make plays at the rim.
Yeah.
And that made it impossible for him to be everywhere. And teams are going to spread out. Like even last night's game, like Chet Holmgren's going to stretch and spread the floor there. That's a challenge for Rudy, and he pulls him away from the basket. Okay, now you have to make some tweaks and adjustments as a coach. Maybe you hide Rudy somewhere else or whatnot or things like that. But the fact that they got perimeter guys that can stop drives cold is pretty strong, and I think that matters a whole lot in terms of just their defensive stuff. Seth makes a great point in terms of his questions of their shooting and whatnot. But again, I think their defense kind of can cover up some of those situations where we might not make threes, but we ain't letting you score. And I think
how do you feel though? How do you feel, Seth, about the shots that they're generating? I mean, look, it's a make or miss league, and we can talk about that till we're blue in the face. But if their process is good, I mean, these are NBA players, right? Like, I mean, the shots have a good enough chance of falling. Kyle Anderson, he's not a great shooter, but if he's taking open looks when the defense is keyed in on Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, I mean, the job should be easier. I think that they might have enough. I mean, I'm not sure what it looks like as far as, can they maintain the 1 seed? Do they have to have home court advantage? Probably. I think that they look like a top 4 team in the West when you consider how the defense is.
I think
do they generate the right looks, Seth?
I almost don't really. I'm not going to say I don't care what looks they're generating now. I think those looks change because, Kyle Anderson, we're going to gap him. All these things that will be different in a playoff environment with that preparation is sort of where I start to. I think it really. I've probably used too many words in saying that I think I worry about them being game planable in a postseason scenario.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys got anything else before we wrap up for the week?
Yes. I've been sitting on this for a while, and this is going to be a little bit of a one mo rant.
I love that you're rolling he's pulling the sleeves up.
Yeah, let's go.
We need to talk about the officials here a little bit. And I'm not talking about the Scott Foster, Chris Paul gate.
No.
I am very tired of offensive players just getting to the line over and over again on nonsense plays. And I'm talking about we got to start allowing for defenders to defend. Man, there was a play last night. De'Aaron Fox got an and one on Dario Saric. He was straight up, man. And all Fox did was jump into him. It was an and one. Fox made a big bucket. It was nice. Shouldn't have been a foul. I've seen it over and over and over again across every team. Anthony Davis got one against Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid has gotten several, but at the point where we're watching games where players are getting 13, 14 free throws a game, and it's not hacko whatever, that's kind of surprising. It's almost sort of the norm that guys are averaging 10, 11 free throws a game and things like that. I think the referees need to start allowing defenders to defend. There's a lot of fouls. I can go through Twitter. I mean, just clips I pull on a regular basis, and it's a problem for fans. It's a problem for the game. Honestly, the refs need to dial back how many free throws we're giving out, because this is getting ridiculous right now. As an offensive player, you have all the advantage. I'm just going to jump into your chest and go up. And I know they're going to blow a whistle. And a lot of times these guys are throwing the shots up just because they know, hey, I got the whistle. I know I'm not making. I'm just to throw this prayer up or whatnot. It's across the league. Every team does it. Every team benefits from it. Every team gets hurt by it. But the biggest thing is it's hurting our game, and the referees have to do a much better job with this. And it's getting kind of ridiculous at this point.
There were 55 fouls called in the Warriors-Kings game in a 48-minute game. There's too many fouls called, but this one in particular, Mo, that you're bringing up, the throw yourself into the defender, it's almost as if the players are able to call their own fouls. It's them signaling to the referee they would like to shoot free throws now. That's the way it's gotten. You can predict these calls. If a guy dribbles 7 times, I know he's going to – Jimmy Butler is one of the worst culprits of this, or maybe best if he's, if you're a Miami Heat fan, you're rooting for him to do this. But the thing where I'm going to throw my body into him, that signals to the referee I get 2 free throws. It feels, it's more pro wrestling than it is basketball. Let's be honest here. We're juicing stats that don't need to be juiced. I just don't care about those numbers. Seth, you're sorry, I interrupted you.
No, first, no, I was just thinking of the pop CM Punk got over the weekend, but I don't know. I think it's sort of putting the onus on the referees themselves and wondering if this is almost if it's so uniformly happening, it's the rule interpretation that they're being given rather than the refs putting air in the whistle. And I think that's sort of been we've talked about this before, sort of the need for, or the desire for bright line consistency and letter of the law enforcement, I think leads to situations where if you know exactly what it's going to take, you can game it. And that puts you in a situation where obviously that's not a real shot attempt, but the instructions are that has to be a foul because otherwise Mark Cuban will get sad. I think it's as much that as it is like the individual refs themselves.
I just think we need to go back to the concept, and we've talked about this before. The officials are there to manage the game and not be the judge of everything. And I just think we got to start letting these. It's just the problem. Like everybody complains about the scores offensively. This is part of it. Defenses can't defend. It's a plea for defenders. Like honestly, like I would be frustrated as hell for these guys. There was a call on the perimeter where a guy drives and bumps into the dude and it's a foul. Like it's just too much where it is. It's a foul when it causes you to miss the shot or not even get the shot off or whatnot. It's a foul when it doesn't allow you, the offensive player, to get to the spot or whatnot, or there's just so many ways to do it. But the officials have to manage the game. They're the gatekeepers of the game. That whistle's a very powerful tool in that stuff. And I want the NBA to do a better job of it because I just want the game to flow. There was a segment
Right
in the OKC Minnesota game where there was no whistles. I don't know what it was, 3 or 4 minutes. The poor players were gassed because they're so used to a whistle every 2 possessions. But like it was beautiful basketball. It was like, yo, this is awesome. Shot making and whatnot and things like that. Like the offense has enough of an advantage. We don't need to make it harder on the defenders. And I just think we're losing the plot here. And I think when we look at stuff where didn't Shea have a game where he got 18 free throws?
Oh
recently?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Shea he's got a great whistle. But it's telling when people like NBA fans, when they do watch like international basketball. I mean, you saw this during the World Cup. We'll see it again in the Olympics. And it's refreshing. The game flow, Mo, like it doesn't stop. And if we're just going to be crass and say it's not about the game and it's more about the entertainment factor, buddy, it's much more fun to watch a basketball game if it doesn't stop every 2 seconds. And if I don't have to go to the review board for 5 minutes in the middle of the second quarter, the referees, I don't want to know their names.
Right.
Like knowing so many referee names actually makes me sad to watch NBA basketball. They're too important. Get them out of there. Our friends over at True Hoop, they posited the question, should there be 4 referees? My argument, let's switch to 1. We have way too many foul calls.
Okay, now
if he doesn't see it, don't call it. That's it.
Come on.
Get him out of here.
The shark. Now
the referee's got to go.
We've jumped the shark now.
All of a sudden,
right.
the steel chair comes out from under the scorer's
That's
table.
right.
You know how much Draymond would get away with 1 ref? Do you know how much?
Listen, let's get Dave Hebner out there. We'll be good to go.
Earl Hebner,
for Seth, for Seth Martnow and Mo Kill, I'm Dave DeFore, and this has been Nerder, She Wrote, on the Athletic NBA Show.